Ben Ryan, welcome. Good to see you. Other side of the world, crazy world that we're living in. But thanks for joining us today. How are things?
Yeah, good. I mean, it would be nice if we were actually having this conversation in Dubai, but I think we can, we can deal with it remotely. Yeah, it's good. Lockdown slowly easing, work slowly coming in. It's been frustrating because sports literally ground to a halt, but it is what it is. And fortunate to live in Southwest London and be safe. So all good.
Death by a million Zooms, somewhat, right? How many Zoom calls have you done over this time?
Yeah, I think I've got about another 4 today. I've even got a green screen that I didn't want to stick on today because it's quite painful. But no, I mean we've all been doing so much of this, haven't we? But you can't beat face to face. It's just you just can't get. I struggle with the conversations without body language and understanding people's. As a coach, maybe that reveals one or two things, I think.
Yeah, I'm sure. Before we get into rugby sevens, what is it that where will we find Ben Ryan now? What occupies Ben's time when not so regularly on the side of rugby fields?
The local coffee shop will say that I literally drink espressos all day, which is not partly true. I just got a ton of things really that I do. So obviously the Rugby X is on hold at the moment, but once we get that going, I'm pretty excited about that. Play X as well is a kind of a money supermarket for professional athletes. Try to help them out. Working as a consultant for UK Sports, so quite busy in France as a consultant as well, and then my own consultancy where I'm working with different clubs and organisations. So I have a nice eclectic mix, and that's kind of saved me a bit in this lockdown, and where you've got that portfolio, so you can do a few different things. But I'm getting a little bit itchy with all of this. I'm not getting stuck into another big project, so I'm starting to think about something maybe like that in the not too distant future.
And with the obviously we would have been in Tokyo or heading to Tokyo at this point, and 4 years after that glorious day for you in Rio. Do you find yourself with itchy feet and wanting to be on the side of a touchline regularly, or maybe not even a touchline, maybe actually just in the training part venue?
Yeah, I think I do, Tom, to be honest with you. I mean, even today, when just we were talking about this off camera earlier, you interview people and we actually can't remember half the stuff that you're asking us about. And we have so many different variations and stops, but looking at the some of the footage and then some of those memories, and that's the good stuff, right? That's the pointy ends where you get to be with the team in really exciting places, playing in really exciting matches and tournaments. And I miss that, and I miss the performance side of it, my kind of planning and curious kind of creating the right performance. So I'm doing bits of it. I'm just not kind of heading up a program at the moment, and I think probably that's where I'll end up in the not too distant future.
So let's go all the way back, and I remember it's probably about the time you and I properly met in 2007, just after you'd left England counties and you'd taken the sevens job. And what did the World Series look like? Not just for Ben Ryan, but for the consumers, the participants, the players, when you stepped onto the series back in 2007?
We didn't have any title sponsor, so there was a lack of finance, and it was, even though I love my rugby and I love my sevens, I hadn't been watching every tournament fastidiously beforehand when I was coaching and working. So when I got to the series for the first time, a lot of it was new to me, and the crowds varied massively. So obviously you come to Dubai and Wellington and back in the day, and obviously Hong Kong. And those three were surging, and they're they were the flagships really. But some of the others, really poor. I went to a home tournament, and at Twickenham, and there were 8, 9, 10,000. It was just dreadful, and nobody was really RFU at the time. Just hadn't really pressed that button to activate, and then we kind of got things moving, so it's been slow. And also on the performance side, really, it was only 2 or 3 teams that were contesting, and it was a massive shock if anybody from outside those kind of got anywhere near the finals. And now that is a very different landscape. It'd be interesting to see post lockdown whether that's affected, because I guess all the unions have been hit hard financially, but where programs will end up after all of this will be interesting. But there's been a huge amounts of change in those years.
And your first Dubai then must have been at the Exiles ground.
Yeah.
which we always refer to as the sandpit, truly. And what are your memories of that first time in Dubai with England? Who was in your squad?
I was excited because I joined the previous year as coach after Dubai and George, and I was also doing it part time because I was also working full time in Newbury, and I was doing it in counties and various other things. So that was my first time, and I was really excited about going there. And I had that Ben Foden was in the team amongst others, and old stalwarts like Simon Hunt, I think, was in that side. I think he scored a winner in the quarterfinal against Samoa, and then we played Fiji in the semi-final. Ben Foden scored a try under the post to win the game, but the in-goal touch didn't speak English, and couldn't confirm that he had grounded the ball. Couldn't go back to replays on the screen, so we were knocked out, and Fiji lost in the final to New Zealand, I think it was. And I just remember what a cool experience it all was. And, you go back in the changing rooms, there's some bloke having a cigarette in there from one of the old boy invitation teams, and you're there with your England shirts on. And it was quite surreal, but it was cool. It was that, I miss that as an elite sport where you don't then have that, realise that 95% of the game's grassroots. And that we're all rugby players, and it was really nice. So I love that element to Dubai where you've got all that stuff going on outside as well. I think it's genuinely a USP for the tournament.
Yeah, it's certainly something we're very proud of, and the invitation tournament for us holds as much stance in many ways as the World Series does, because we really feel like we represent a community. I don't want to go through all of your Dubais, but I am intrigued to think about what your experience was in 2009 when we hosted the Rugby Sevens World Cup. It was very different, and we've moved to, I'd like to say, a flashy new venue, but ultimately it's another temporary built stand in the middle of the desert, but a very different venue. What are your memories of that experience and the game beginning to grow? Because it was just before the Olympic decision.
Yeah, it was, and we were just I was starting to get my feet under the table a bit more with England, and we started to have some contracted players. We'd gone through all the heartache of EPS agreement and losing players, and then I couldn't get Regulation 9, so I couldn't get any championship players either. And then we sort of coming out the end of that with some full-time contracts, and we were going into the World Cup as joint top in the world, and with quite a lot of momentum actually, and we'd done well. And then we went to the World Cup, and it was just, one big gun after another getting knocked over. And we were the last of the quarterfinals after New Zealand, Fiji and South Africa had all got knocked out. So you can imagine as a coach, I'm like, well, this is lining up nicely. Everything's pretty good here. And then we got like a whole load of points against Samoa in the quarterfinal. We managed to claw it back to I think it was 21 all or 26 all to go into extra time. And then again, we had a couple of bizarre moments, a couple of poor decisions by us on the field, and then ended up having the ball in the middle of about 10 metres from the posts. And the referee had told Damu not to move because he was in an offside position. So he had to stand there as the Samoan just picked up the ball and scored under the post. Now, if he had picked up the ball, he probably would have been a yellow card or a penalty, and they probably would have kicked the goal anyway. But it was just bizarre to watch everyone standing still as he scored. And then the Samoan coach did a cartwheel in front of me, which it was cool. Like, you got to celebrate your victories. And I just, and then Wales went on and did an amazing thing under Johnsy and deservedly won the World Cup. And it sprung so many surprises, that World Cup. It was just I haven't got that as one of my best memories, that one, because I truly thought we could have won that, but we just didn't get it right in that quarterfinal.
It's irony, because you also look at it with the emotional part of being involved, and I suppose we look at it as it was one of the great opportunities for the sport to show that it was truly global, as those big names all fell in that last 8, and then you're left with Wales, Argentina, Kenya, and Samoa, and you're like, wow, this really is an Olympic sport. And a few months later, that was what it became.
Yeah, and all the IC had a lot of their members at that tournament, and so it's all well and good World Rugby telling them that that it's not just about the top teams, and you're going to see different teams on the podium, and then for them to see it in a World Cup was pretty cool, and it probably cemented all their thoughts about having Rugby Sevens in the Olympics.
Yeah, and then of course Wales are the ones that go on and win it. It could have been truly a very different non-tier one nation, but Wales almost had the biggest shock that they won it that time, which is amazing.
Yeah, and afterwards, there was a bit of press about it, but it's gone quiet really since. And Paul John and the rest of that team, they were sensational in that tournament, and they really did have that momentum. That game against New Zealand, where they had a bit of luck, but still, they deserved it. And I'd like to hear their story a bit more. It's a cool story, and I think we should laud them a bit more than perhaps has happened.
I think as sevens, as we've aged over the years and the series has got older, I think we have a responsibility now to tell some of those tales of the archive, and have the new generation listening to Nigel Starmer-Smith's voice and really sort of live those moments again, because they were great times, even if it was a little raw.
100%. Yeah, that's it. And it's not always what's been done at the moment is best practice. And there's been some amazing stuff that's happened in sevens that I'm sure a lot of your guests will have talked about. Right.
So we've got a particularly bright orange kit in 2011, which is ingrained in Dubai history. Talk to me about that photo that sort of sits in the middle of us there. That's Greg Barden as your captain, right? 2011 winning in Dubai.
Yeah, it is. And that was I think, what did we win? 210 and 211?
Yeah, that's right.
Or is that right? So I'm mixing up my stories probably here because that was trying to think who we beat in the final there. I think probably France in 2011.
2011 is France, yeah.
Yeah. And that was a bit more of a straightforward tournament, to be honest with you. Firstly, we got the lovely Tequila Sunrise shirts, and that actually started my kind of relationship with Nike, and I still work for them as a consultant, and that globally sold out. But interestingly, that shirt, the design and the material was used then by all the NFL teams for the next 4 or 5 years. So Nike were pretty happy about that. And they also created a machine. Rugby players get into contact a lot more than NFL. And so they hadn't tested out whether these shirts ripped, and they created this machine that tests out NFL and rugby shirts based upon what the England Sevens guys had trialed in that year. And that was a great year. They had a lot of success. Greg was a great leader for them, and I can see Rob Vickham in there, and then probably one of the best players that I've ever coached. I saw in Damu in the middle there, and had an amazing physio, Brett Davison, and got Matt. We got a few other boys, Dan Norton there, starting to sizzle, and Matt Turner, who was on form. So there really were some world-class players in that group, and crackers there in the middle. The year before was the one that tipped it, 2010. Because we had, for the first time, had full-time contracts with the RFU Sevens program, and all because I couldn't get any players from the Premiership, from the academies, or the Championship, and we have no recourse of action other than to contract people. And then the first game with a full-time team, we lost to Portugal in Dubai, and immediately, the naysayers were like, Ben Ryan doesn't know what he's doing. England don't know what they're doing, and they've just gone into Dubai and got beaten by Portugal. And then I think we won the second game, whoever that was against. And then we had this massive break that you sometimes get in Dubai. I think it was about 4 or 5 hours. And I went to, I think it was at Rashid School, where they got a swimming pool outside and changing rooms. And we just got out of the stadium. And we were playing last game against Fiji, who were in our group, and we had to beat them by 8 points to go through. And then we had a really good chat that even though this was tournament one, it was literally our season. And then we went and did a job against Fiji, and beat them last play of the game to win by 8. And then we played quarterfinals, semi-finals and finals, number 3, number 2, and number 1 in the world, New Zealand, Australia and Samoa at the time, and knocked them all over pretty much on last plays. And that kind of set then that next chapter for that group of players. And that was probably one of my happiest memories, I think, as a sevens coach, that period from losing to Portugal. There's also a journalist that wrote a big piece in Hong Kong that said that I should get sacked, so should all the team. But his deadline was before our Fiji game. So he had written all of this, and their headlines the following day in the Hong Kong in the papers was sack Ryan, and then we'd actually won the tournament by the time the paper came out. So I don't think he kept his job.
No.
But yeah, so I've got massively happy memories around all of that, and Dubai then kind of started that golden period, I guess, for England. Having Mike had won it a couple of times before, and then we had a really successful period, and I loved the fact that it was generally the first tournament, so that means it's the longest period of time you get with the players. And I like that. I can kind of get that 8 or 9 weeks planning right, the stress cycles right, make sure they're peaking. And I think in the 9 times I've done Dubai, I've got teams to semi-finals or finals 8 out of those 9 times. And I like that long period to get the teams in the right place.
Amazing listening to that, because you think in many ways in some sports, the beginning of the season is really challenging because you've got a long time away from a competitive environment, but what you're saying is actually, having that real block working towards a tournament is good in sevens.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I mean, we would find some funny places to go and play for the team to get some experience, whether it's Harpenden Pub Sevens, played them there, and you end up, getting beaten occasionally by some invitation teams and stuff, but it's all part of, if you can keep to the big picture on what you're trying to achieve. And so I think that was probably my most successful tournament as a coach across Fiji and England. I didn't lose to New Zealand in 9 years there. And, we had a lot of success there, I think 4 finals and 5 finals out of the 9. So I like that. And I guess that helped me when I got round to Rio, that you have a similar kind of runway going into the tournament. So I was confident that my planning was good around that kind of time frame.
Before we get on to that, I suppose the second part of your career with that other rather successful nation in Dubai, a couple of memories that stick out of my time in those early years of you with England are that classic win against New Zealand in Wellington, which would that have been the February before that first win in Dubai, or was that the February after that Dubai?
You're asking the wrong man, really.
Yeah. It was before.
I think that was the year we hit 4 finals and won 2. I don't think we won. Yeah, Dubai, we lost in the finals to South Africa. We beat New Zealand in the semi-finals. Took 21-point lead. If you remember, Josh Drananui was just unbelievable in that Dubai tournament and carved up New Zealand. And then Wellington, that was and we had a couple of really exciting tournaments. Wellington last play Damu, and then also last play extra time Mickey Young in Twickenham against New Zealand again to beat them. So yeah, that was a really happy period with the team. And we were running second in the series after London with 1 tournament to go. And again, I think we over-celebrated our London win. We didn't get out of our group in Edinburgh to really put pressure to see if we could win the series. And we actually ended up coming 3rd. We dropped down to 3rd. The last game, I think Fiji won the 3rd place playoff to leapfrog us. So there's a cool season. But yeah, I think once we got to that first final in Dubai, I think that was the first final I got to as an England coach. That kind of gave me confidence that we were onto the right tracks.
So I'm going to scoot past perhaps 2011 through to September, October 2013, because I know that the end of that England time was both challenging for you and arguably challenging for a lot of the Sevens program in general. And actually, it probably taught you a lot of things as you moved into the second part of your career. And how did the Fiji, I know you've told it many times before, but how did that contact originate? Was it World Rugby? Was it someone in Fiji? How did that all come about?
Yeah, I'll tell you about. I wouldn't mind talking about 2012 because it was a disaster of a season, really. Even though we won New Zealand Sevens and we got to the World Cup final, and I think we ended up 5th or 6th in the series, and we won Europe. We bombed out lots of tournaments, and Dubai, was a depressing place for me at that time. We beat Samoa in the group, who ended up winning it. We lost last point 22-21 to Portugal, and we lost, I think, 19-10 or 19-12 to South Africa, who also got knocked out of the pool by Portugal that year. And I think France beat Fiji, and it was a weird tournament. but I learned a lot in that last year about how not to do things right, about how to get better relationships with my bosses, all sorts of things that put me in good stead for when eventually I got the Fijian job, and I wasn't going to go to back into sevens after my kind of last few months with England. But then I saw a mate wrote on Twitter that Fiji are looking for a sevens coach. So the process began, and it was an email to say, I'm interested. They said, missed deadline, but we know who you are. Let's have an interview. Had a Skype interview like this. Got up at 2 a.m. Eventually, an hour and a half later on Fiji time, they call me. There's lots of people looking in. I've told this story a lot, but it was a bizarre interview where they asked me lots of questions, nothing to do with rugby. And then I stayed awake, which I thought was a victory. And then in the morning, I just turned on the laptop again just to find out a bit more about Fiji, and saw that the CEO who had interviewed me just got sacked. So I thought, well, that's that. And then 2 weeks later, I get a phone call when I'm out having dinner in Richmond from the new acting CEO asking in a long way about it, whether, that effectively he said, we've got a press conference in 20 minutes and we're naming you as a new Fiji coach. And that was it. And I kind of said yes. And I didn't know how much I was going to get paid, what my contract was like, any of the stuff that you expect when you take a job. But I knew I needed to do something that my last 6-7 months with England had left a really sour taste in my mouth. I'd fallen out of love with rugby and with professional sport. And I knew I needed to press reset button to just give my kind of resuscitate me and my energy and enthusiasm as a coach. And well, Fiji did that and more.
It's funny because I remember you and I having coffee in Richmond just as you were going through that process in a Starbucks on the main road in Richmond. And I remember you telling me about that interview and just how, they didn't really ask about anything to do with rugby. And to think that in many ways, from watching from afar, a lot of what you went through with that Fiji team was also nothing to do with rugby. Like the rugby bit was almost the easy bit.
Always with Fiji, the rugby bit's the easy bit on field, and the coaching, they're so enthusiastic, keen to learn, resilient, quick learners, and embrace team culture really well. A lot of that to do with the Fijian culture as a nation. So all of that's easy for me anyway. I found it much more straightforward. Yeah, but the off-field stuff, at least you knew where stuff was coming from sometimes, whereas with England, it was often a convoluted process of working out who was behind some of the decisions. Whereas with Fiji, you knew where it was coming from and how to try to hold it off or to stop it. And, I loved my time there, and I was really grateful that I had so many people around me that kept me afloat in those early months, like Osea Kalinasal, Rapati Kavesi, the manager, William Kuhn, the physio, and then I had another, and then some of the other senior players. And then in my final year, Crackers came on board as well to help the winners program and help me out as well. And he was brilliant. So it was, there was lots of people that I really owe a debt of gratitude for my time in Fiji.
And those images that we just shared, which we'll share again now, I can't help but notice the way that in the Fiji photo bottom left, where you're lifting the Dubai Sevens trophy, you're up on shoulders, and I suppose that's not an image that you often see in professional sport or rugby specifically, where the coach is up on the shoulders of a player. And does that sort of surmise that team spirit, that culture thing that you're talking about?
Yeah, I think it's part of it. I'm not asking to go on no, that. There's Leo Nakasau that put me on there, and I had the same in Rio. Apisai Domalai, who was in the team for most of my time, that was his kind of thing. If we won a title, he'd whack me on his shoulders. I get it's togetherness. Like, I think as a coach and when you're with the team, they need to know that there's somebody helping to make decisions and strategically and lead and protect and create a safe environment. But you also need a flat changing room where people can stand up and say what they want to say and can talk, and they feel they can be their best versions. And I kind of reverse back at tournaments. You dip in when you need to make interventions that will help the team become better, but you try to let that team run themselves. And, got Greg there in the middle. Greg is an ex-Special Forces soldier and just generally a very good leader. And he's also got there with Rob Vickerman and Crackers and Damu and Matt Turner and Tom Powell, those guys, and James Rodwell. He's got some good leaders around him, and they were a leaderful team as well. I think as coaches, you try to create that.
And that piece that you spoke about Dubai in general, with that run into it, of course, that probably was magnified to the biggest extent in that first year with Fiji, because you've only been there a few months, if that, maybe 6 weeks, and you get this opportunity to run to Dubai. I mean, how challenging was that 6 weeks, and how do you take that 6 weeks and turn that into beating the best teams in the world?
It wasn't actually that bad. I had my first tournament in Gold Coast where I didn't pick the team. I'd had the team for about 5 days. We lost in the quarterfinals to the old team, England. Got on the plane and then started planning really. And then I came back to Fiji pretty soon afterwards. And I had about 6 weeks, I think. And I know we didn't have any money. We had no funding. World Rugby had stopped all funding at that point and no commercial sponsors. But I knew that just hit them with their fitness, get them fit, and put some basic foundation stones in, which for us in sevens was get the defence better, get less yellow cards, and have some organisation around the kickoff. And that really was it. Get them fitter and keep the ball and stop and keep 7 players on the field. That was my defensive strategy in Dubai, really. Really simple. And it's like, well, that's measurable as well, and the good thing about fitness, particularly in team sports, is you don't need any resource for it. You can run up and down on beaches, on pitches, on sand dunes, and you can see the change. You can see that change on what they can soak up as far as the intensity of the training sessions. So we worked really hard on that, and then nudging their diet a little bit so that I could give them a bit more an understanding of what they should and shouldn't be eating, and all those things had the desired result, which was, well, when they're fit, they can do their thing as they've always done. They can just do it for longer and with a bit more clarity. And then we got to that amazing semi-final against New Zealand. It's still New Zealand's heaviest defeat at international level, at any level of the game, men's or women's, sevens or 15s. And it could have been more if we'd kicked our goals. And it was 44-0. And the boys just blew New Zealand off the park. And that gave the team confidence and the people confidence that we were potentially onto the start of some exciting times for Fiji.
Can you track your thoughts on that aeroplane as you begin to plan for Dubai? And when you think back from Rio to that point, can you see how those things are linked, or was it very organic and grew from there?
No, I mean, if you take the start point, which for me really was Dubai, and then the end point, which was Rio, both of those were bookended by knowing that if we put fitness at the top and really good understanding of that, and getting players very fit, but by the time they hit that first game, they're feeling absolutely fresh and full of energy, and that's art where art meets science. Then if you get all of that right, and you tinker around with a few other things, then you'll be, for us, I knew that I would be successful. And so Dubai gave me that first bit, and then Rio kind of finished with the fact that we were the fittest team in Rio. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And they ran themselves, and I was just tinkering with a few things in Rio. So I definitely can see that as some continuity around that, that Dubai had that connection towards what we were doing in the Olympics and any other tournaments where we had some good runway. So the 2013 Rugby World Cup in Russia with the England team, we lost in the final in that pouring rain. That was a terrible final, but we were fit and healthy for that. The 2009 or 10 Commonwealth Games in Delhi, we beat the world champions Samoa in the quarterfinals, beat the silver medalists Australia in the group. And then ran aground against a brilliant New Zealand team in the semi-final. But that team was super fit, and they'd had that same planning that we'd had pre-Dubai. So there's definitely those connections.
How does, when you compare those squads that you've just mentioned there, and there's quite a linear position about where the series has grown from there, it's the early days of evolution 2 of the professional part of the series all the way through to ultimately the Olympic era. Does the methodology change a huge amount over that decade in regards to getting teams fit because the game's changed so much, or ultimately is the core exactly the same?
I think that there's a huge amount that's the same. I think if you're not careful, that you kind of get led too much by science and conservatism, and you don't actually think about, like, it's a hard game, sevens. You have to work hard. You have to work at a high level, and nearly all of those crunch points, moments that I'll go back as a coach and think about my memories in the last however many years about the things we haven't got right, we have got right, have often been a good or a bad decision when that team or that player is absolutely knackered. And, you know, if you then extrapolate that and go, well, look, if you've got teams that are fit and they're clearly aligned and understand what's required of them, then when we get to those crunch points, we're far more likely to be on the right side of the result. And so, yeah, I absolutely think that some of that stuff, how you get a player fit and how you get a team fit, collectively fit in the sessions that you do, I don't think that's changed a huge amount. We've got stuff we can chuck on to give us some signal, like GPS and heart rate monitors and osmolarity testing and wellness questionnaires and all that sort of stuff. But ultimately, as a coach, your site can see how your players are adapting when you're collectively working people at a high level fitness. And I don't think that's changed too much. So I think I'm answering the question that, there's not a lot of difference, I don't think.
It's the game is a pretty basic game, but it's just played at exceptionally high speed, right? So
Tom, we forget about it a lot. I think, that we get carried away about it all. And like, I was the first coach to use GPS in sevens and actually in 15s in international games. And so, I used that because I just wanted to measure what a sevens player was going through a tournament. And we didn't have that statistics and that data, just to really give me some idea on how to tweak stuff and what I was doing. But it is a simple game, right? With a football coach last week remotely on Zoom, and he's saying sometimes we forget about it. I'm playing in black against someone in white. I'm trying to get the ball off the people in white and pass the ball to the people in black. And ultimately, rugby sevens is a simple game. And if you get taken away from that, then I think players can get taken away from that and they can lose their alignment. If they lose their alignment, then when the pressure comes on, I think that plus some of the other factors will mean that you don't always get things right.
And you've been out here with HSBC and you've done some coaching with some of the Emirati schools, and sevens is a vehicle that you think is great to bring the sport of rugby to people that haven't been involved in the past? Yeah,
look, I think any time where you have some genuine opportunity to go into non-traditional rugby playing communities, then the game has to be simple to start with, and it can't have too many moving parts. I do think Rugby X has a massive part to play in this, but Rugby Sevens has been a brilliant vehicle for so many teams and so many nations to develop their game. And with HSBC, that I've been over a few times to Dubai and various other places around the world, where we've used rugby to excite youngsters to want to play, make it fun, keep the rules simple. They then can go and experience world-class Olympic athletes playing in Dubai Sevens as well, which is going to give them a taste to want to play more rugby. And the whole thing knits in really nicely, and it's a fantastic sport. And I love to spend time at grassroots trying to get people to fall in love with the game that we've all fallen in love with.
And is it some of those experiences that you've had around the world? I mean, I think back to when you brought the Fiji team to Hamilton's Rugby Club, and we had all of those guys from the local township in Cape Town, and the Fiji guys just played with them, and that, to see that joy is ultimately an inspiration. And are those experiences how you've got to Rugby X? Maybe tell us a bit about the role that Rugby X you think has to play and your involvement with that.
Yeah, I got to Rugby X really by a few conversations, but I believe that it's a version of the game that can fit in nicely to the overall rugby landscape. It's not at any point is it trying to compete with sevens or 15s. It's providing a potential gateway. So it's the simplest version really of the game. And I think if you want to kind of have a top end version of the game that's going to be indoor version, sell out stadiums and live on TV with international players, then you need to show that there's actually a form of the game that you can start at grassroots and in a small space where it's really just about decision making, catch, pass, tackle, and that's effectively it. And as an ex-teacher and coming from a comprehensive school in South London that was a rugby playing one, but I think I was about the last player to come out of Wimbledon College that got professional rugby contract. But even in my team at school, there were probably half a dozen players that were better than me, and it's just lack of opportunity. And I think Rugby X is one of those tools that we can use, as Sevens is as well. And we've seen in various parts of the world how it's managed to allow people a vehicle to just do their thing and enjoy rugby and then set them on their path. So Rugby X hopefully sets someone on a path to go, I want to know where my local rugby club is and I want to go and play with them, or I'm going to go to a school that's playing rugby, or I'm going to ask the teacher if we can start up a rugby team, or I'm going to go to a local Sevens tournament. All those sort of things. You just want as many touch points as you can. And I think Rugby X is quite a sexy version of the game. It's indoor, lights are on, the music's on, got international players running around for 10-minute games. It's quite alluring then to a youngster to go, yeah, I have a flavour of rugby through Rugby X.
Without getting too political then, what do you think that the Sevens game may be, and what may be here in Dubai? And perhaps we're a little bit different due to the sheer participation numbers and the way that we deliver our event to the world. Do you think there's some learnings in regards to what Sevens can learn from that Rugby X product that you put out to the world last year?
Yeah, look, one of the things that obviously from a commercial point of view, Rugby X had to be alluring to TV. So I won't tell you the numbers that we got for Rugby X compared with Dubai the year before, but it's a significant difference in how many more Rugby X got, and we know that you've got to sell the product. So Sevens needs to be a more sellable product. It needs to be a shorter version where it's a bit more straightforward, and that formatting piece hopefully will happen now, where less teams, more knockout games, and shorter days. And I think I've always thought there's also a piece as a community of World Sevens to have a bit more of a grassroots angle. We do go in as teams to various places, and sometimes you build up relationships with a local school I remember with Fiji, there's a local school in Las Vegas, off the strip that, we built up a really good relationship with, and they were sending stuff to Fiji and we were dropping in and doing coaching sessions. But some of that is a relationship that a team has done with a club or a school. But actually, I think there's also a piece potentially where players that have just finished, current players, could get involved around each tournament in a community project that has longevity that then starts spreading to those regions in a longer period of time, to spread the game really, and to help educate coaches and managers and physios and conditioners and all those sort of things. I think we're there for a week normally at some of these venues. There's a lot of intellectual property and enthusiasm to want to spread the game. I think we could just do a bit more. There's lots of things, but we have got a great product, and hopefully when we come out of all of this, that product's going to get smartened up a bit, tightened up a little bit, polished, and then created for the new world really, that's going to allow us to take Sevens to the next level.
I know that we feel we have a keen sense of responsibility to support UARF, so the Rugby Federation here in the UAE, to facilitate world-class players and coaches and characters with that, to go in and inspire the youth of tomorrow, but also those that might not have come across our game before. And our legacy program, which we're really committing to, is something that, going on the lines you've just said there, I think we have a responsibility in our region, both in content and in operations, to drive that. And it's great to hear that you share that, because it is characters, right? You pick up a game because you're inspired by somebody else, whether that's Chris Cracknell or so Adama.
That's it. And whether we like it or not, if you've got a PE teacher at your local school that's been banging on about how you should be passing or tackling, you perhaps as a young kid pay a bit more lip service to the England player that then pops in and tells you how to do it, much to the frustration of that teacher. But there's a lot of stickiness when a next door player that's got got that credibility, comes in and does stuff and just can ignite that flame to get them going on their path. And I've seen it happen. I've come back to tournaments year after year where the teachers said, that kid that your team helped coach last year has now been selected here, and he's gone here and gone that. And it's not uncommon, but they just need as many touch points as you can. And as a fraternity, we can help provide more of those.
We've talked a lot about rugby. Let's talk about some of those players that have really excited you, both in the past, say, players that you either played on your side that you coached or played against, and maybe some of the players that you're seeing on the series now that are those exciting players that are inspiring the youth of tomorrow. Who are the people that stick out in your mind?
Oh, crikey. There's a ton of them. When you started talking, Tom, about getting away from not talking about rugby and something else, immediately I had a story in my head that I thought might be of fun, that was in Dubai, and it was one of the years that we won. And in that first day in between games, Dubai's like, you go into the players' areas to watch the games, but there's lots of fans around, lots of people. And there were also the cheerleaders. They were there as well. And so I was there we finished the game and I was doing my analysis of everything else. And we hadn't played that well. And I came up into the stands and the boys were all chatting to the cheerleaders. This is when I was with England, and I wasn't happy with that. I thought they weren't focused enough. And so when they got back that night, I brought them all into my room and I had a chat with them. And I said, look, I need you guys to be clear of thinking. I don't want to see you chatting to a cheerleader. I don't want to see an England fan then having a go at me if he's saying, like, England are losing, and then I'm seeing one of the boys chatting up a cheerleader. So they all said, yeah, fine. Following day, we get in the bus and we drive that 40 minutes or whatever it was out into the sevens.
25.
And yeah, 25. Sorry. And our bus gets. We were driving and our bus gets hit by another bus on the way there, and so we have to pull off to the side and wait for a replacement, and one of the minibuses from all the other teams that are coming through. So we get off there and we get ready to come on, and we see one of the white minibuses coming, and so it pulls over, and it's the one full of the cheerleaders. So our boys are all getting on, and they're not saying a word to all these girls they've been talking to yesterday. And the girls are going, why aren't you talking to us? What's wrong with you? And then one of them said, ask him. And then I had to explain that I don't want them talking to him. And just the timing and the fact that, you couldn't have made that up, that would be the one minibus that would come and get us. So, but yeah, as far as a lot of players kind of stamp their mark and sevens in Dubai because the pitch is so beautiful. It's not normally a perfectly dry day, and everybody's fit for those first tournaments generally for selection, if nothing else. And so, I just did for World Rugby seven players to watch, and I think someone like Selvin Davids for South Africa, and that clutch of young players that are coming through are starting to become very persuasive in their arguments for South Africa to be favourites for Tokyo Olympics. I think they're looking very good. I loved Caleb Clark playing for New Zealand, and he's gone to Super Rugby now, but he was an absolute stellar star, and I think he's one of some of those youngsters that I think are going to go on to great things in 15s. And obviously you can't look beyond some of the guys that are currently playing for Fiji, and Jerry Tuwai from a kid that we had to chase down the street when he wouldn't take his fillings from the dentist to becoming World Player of the Year and Olympic gold medalist. And still he'd be able to turn a game on its head in the Olympic Games, however many players are defending him. It shows you how exciting the game is. So there's players coming through, and that's great to see. And I've been doing some work with France, and I can see that they've also got some great youngsters coming through on the back of their youth Olympic gold a few years ago. And then the women's game, as we both know, has really made massive strides in the last few years on the field.
Yeah, we spoke about this with DJ Forbes last week and Cartanana the week before about just how exciting the women's game is now. And it's not just one or two teams that, you sit down and there's just some fantastic athletes. if you compare that to when you first saw the series, the women's series start, which we've been on all along in Dubai, just night and day in just how great the women's game is now.
Yeah, night and day. I think the Olympics had a lot to do with that, because straight away, I think 7 years out when we got the green light, that gave a time frame for the women's game, and with that came some resource, some expertise, some better quality of athletes, and competition drove that as well, and all those things came together to increase just the skill and standard of the game. And you see someone like Portia Woodman, Charlotte Caslick, these girls are just phenomenal rugby players, pass well off either hand, their stepping, their acceleration, their understanding of the game is brilliant. And so I love watching those games as well. And they're certainly exciting, and there's more and more teams. So it's probably where Sevens was 10 years ago, as far as it's New Zealand and USA, Canada, and Australia. That's probably the other four, but we've still then got England, obviously, and the Russians are pretty good. France are brilliant now, women's runners up in the last World Cup. So that top table is getting bigger for women as well, which I think is fantastic.
Before we let you go, what is it that, we're obviously now a year out from Tokyo, sadly, for all of what's going on around us, but what is it that excites you about the future of the game, looking past Tokyo and looking on another 10 years in your involvement and what you've seen? What excites you about the sport?
Well, my hope, I guess, in the next 10 years is that we don't have, sevens is an amazing sport. Some unions use it really well. Some don't. And the global game uses it really well sometimes in spotlight moments like the Olympics and World Cups and big tournaments. And other times it doesn't. It kind of drifts a little bit. And I'd really like to see it far more enveloped in the overall global calendar for rugby, so that sevens, really everybody understands why sevens is in the calendar, what it's there for, and how players, coaches, unions use it, and to maximize it on every level. And I think we've only started to scratch the surface with that, really. We haven't perhaps leveraged the success of the Rio Olympics for sevens. We're a clean sport, where we've got medalists that are coming from non-traditional medal-topping nations that are standing on podiums for rugby sevens, and we've got the ability for new countries to come in pretty quickly to be medal contenders. So I think, and it's an exciting sport, and it fits well to the Olympics ideals. So I think we need to again tighten everything up again. So in 10 years' time, we can all answer that question on the place that sevens has in the global game.
And what about you? Because you don't have to answer, but if someone walked up to you and said, "Right, here's a 15s opportunity, and here's an opportunity to come back to the World Series," where would we see Ben Ryan in maybe 5 years' time?
Don't know. Like I said, that I think I find it hard to head coach another team after Fiji, but performance directing. If there's less tournaments and less travel for me, I think that would be good. I did turn down some 15s opportunities. I think now I'm kind of feeling like I'd like to step back in. So I'm open. I'll see, but I'm not chasing any opportunities at the moment. But I think when the time comes, I'll know when the right next job, really. But I'm enjoying all the different exciting projects I'm on at the moment. I've got my hands full of all of that. So for now, I'll just be dancing around all the different things I do.
Sounds it. Well, I know that I'm personally grateful for the conversations that we've had over the years about sevens. I know that the wider sevens public are very grateful for the teams that you've put on the field. But thank you ever so much for all of the efforts you put in here in Dubai, and we look forward to welcoming you back in the future.
Yeah, pleasure. Can't wait to when next time I can get into the stadium and enjoy some rugby. Thanks, Tom, for that. It's been great.
Ben, appreciate your time.
Cheers.
Thanks,
no worries. Take
Thanks.
care.
Bye.